Hey everybody, Roman versus with the Squashfest podcast and my co-host, the boy Harm. Today we're going to be talking about the late great Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. My thing, Hulk Hogan, is he wrestling's first biggest superstar of all time?
You have to say yes.
I would say yes because he's the one who brought wrestling into the forefront of a national viewership. You know, there were guys before him who were popular in their little territories, but Hogan was the first real great one.
And then he was the first
Um,
one to hit Hollywood.
okay, I'll give you that first big one to hit Hollywood. There
Yeah.
were, yeah, okay.
No, I know there were
Um,
other wrestlers, but I'm saying like he was the one that hit. Like he had his own movies, he had his own show, he was
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, Hogan Thunder in Paradise, all his own movies. No Holds Barred with also late great Tiny Little. Um, Hogan was the first real professional wrestler to break through to a mainstream audience where you can go to anybody who was living at that time.
Yep.
You could be 10 years old, you could be 85 years old. They knew who Hulk Hogan was, right? It's shocked that he died today at 71. For the last couple of weeks, we've heard, different people saying different things about his health. Bubba the Love Sponge coming to mind, his former best friend, saying Hogan's in failing health. And everybody's been refuting it for a couple of weeks. And he went into cardiac arrest today. And they stretchered him out, and he passed away, I think, on his way to the hospital. First and foremost, condolences to the Bolea family and Nick Hogan and
And Brooke.
Brooke Hogan, and the ex-wife and everybody, and his current wife, um, current widow now, I guess I should say. Uh, it's a shock. My daughter woke me up to this news, and I was just like, that sucks." And even though he's a problematic figure, and we'll get into that in a second, he's still a focal point of professional wrestling. You cannot be a professional wrestling fan without being somewhat of a Hulk Hogan fan. Even if you only watched him during the NWO years or you watched him in the golden age wrestling in the 80s, you need to respect what Hulk Hogan did for the industry.
I think you can respect what Hulk Hogan did for the industry. I don't think that necessarily makes you a fan.
Okay, I guess. I mean, to me, fanhood is a weird thing. It's like I'm a fan of what he did. I'm a fan of the characters he portrayed. I don't necessarily need to be a fan of his in-ring work, and I was never captivated by a Hulk Hogan match, but Hogan always made people want to check in to wrestling on a weekly basis. And what's the number one thing in professional wrestling is how do you get them to keep watching? And Hogan was great at that. So in that aspect, I believe anybody who grew up in that era was a fan of Hulk Hogan because he was the guy at the top, name at the top of the card.
In that era, I absolutely agree with you. I don't think there was anybody out there other than fellow wrestlers who might have had some disdain for him. But I'm talking about current. I'm talking about in current history, like as somebody who avidly watches, or someone who used to watch wrestling, or someone who, you know, loves all things wrestling, but there's an asterisk for some.
Uh, Of course, and it goes back to the video on the sex tape of him and his former friend's Bubble Love Sponge's wife, where he said disparaging remarks about minorities and other people, and how he didn't want his daughter associating with them, and he resides in a weird place in a lot of fans' hearts and a lot of fans' minds because of that. Right? We respect what he did, but we also can't respect the man, and even to the point where I'll make two comparisons. WWE tried to write him off for a few years, tried to take him off the promotional materials, try to get him off TV for a little while, but then eventually brought him back and made him host WrestleMania with Titus O'Neil. Um, they didn't completely write him off and erase him from history the way they did a la Chris Benoit when Chris Benoit murdered his family, right? And that's because you couldn't write off Hulk Hogan. You couldn't if there was a way, if Hogan wasn't this important figure to the history of wrestling, Vince McMahon would have said, "Kick rocks. We don't want anything to do with you forever anymore because you hurt our industry, you hurt our business." But Hogan has the WrestleMania 3 moment where he slams Andre. He has a WrestleMania 1 moment where it's him and Mr. T against Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. Right? He main evented the first 9 WrestleManias to be frank. So you can't completely write Hogan off, regardless of what he did, in his personal life. The other comparison I'll make is on a mainstream level, and I said this to you right before we went live. He is kind of WWE's or wrestling's version of Michael Jackson, where a lot of people he is on their greatest of all time list
Hmm.
because of everything he's done. But a lot of people will never acknowledge him because of what he did, or in Michael Jackson's case, because of the allegations of what he did. So he's kind of in that weird area where you can't ignore him, but you can't differentiate him from the problematic things either. So he's kind of that. He's like so it's a weird place that Hogan resides in. His legacy is going to be always muddied by what happened towards the back half of his life.
Well, I think it's that, and also just he in recent years also loved to identify as a MAGA, and instantly when you throw in politics, that kind of throws people one way or another. Um, but briefly, I just wanted to touch on his accolades since you were mentioning so many of them. He's a 12-time world champion, winning 6 in WWE and 6 in WCW.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 2-time Royal Rumble winner in 1990 and 1991 back to back. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame twice,
Mm-hmm.
once by himself and once as
That's
a
an
member of
NWO.
the NWO. Um, yeah, he has a lot of accolades here.
If you're talking about pure baby faces in the history of wrestling,
Hmm.
he's, in my opinion, he's number one or number two. It's him and Austin.
Hmm.
Those are the guys. If you're talking about heels in the history of professional wrestling, he's on the short list. So I think he's in the top five for his NWO run. Like, and there's not a lot of guys you can say that about, where he's a great babyface and a great heel.
Hmm.
So he's, like I said, he's problematic, but he's one of the greatest wrestlers. Not wrestlers. He's one of the greatest performers in the history of wrestling. Because those are two different delineations. Not a great wrestler, but a great performer. Um, but yeah, 71 years old.
Cardiac arrest.
And it sucks moving forward. Because we were just talking about this the other day. He's like, he's got a beer company he started that's doing, by all accounts, very well. And he's just really recently started a new business with Eric Bischoff, Real American Freestyle.
Hmm.
Um, we'll see how Bischoff addresses the loss of Hogan on his podcast early next week when he does it. He's going to probably dedicate a whole show to Hogan and how he addresses moving forward with his company. But it's a lot. This is going to be something that, if you're not a fan of Hogan, I would advise skipping SmackDown tomorrow
Yes.
because they are going to go. It's going to be very Hogan centric tomorrow,
Hmm.
regardless of where your politics lay or who you don't like. And Hogan is WWE and vice versa.
Well, we
You
don't
can't say.
know. I mean, I would expect it, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they just did the quiet photo with the
I
years
can't
of
see that.
birth to and
I
then
can't
just
see
left it
that.
at that.
I can't see that. Not for somebody who has the legacy of Hogan. I understand these two guys died in different times,
Hmm.
but remember, think about what they did for Owen Hart, and think about what they did for Eddie Guerrero, right? When those two guys died, and those were more shocking deaths. One died in the ring, one died as a heart attack, like
I
in his
I
bath.
agree, but those guys weren't booed at last scene.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
Well,
That's what
not
I'm saying.
not 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 booed for things outside the ring, like Owen was a heel,
No, no, no. I get
but
what you're
yeah,
saying. No, no, no. I understand what you're saying, but that's what I'm saying. Like he was literally booed. The fans were not happy to see him, so it might not be as heavy as we would suspect. I'm not saying they're not gonna do nothing. I'm just saying, you also have to think about the people backstage, the wrestlers themselves, if they even want to take part.
I think you start the show with a 10 bell salute at least for Hulk Hogan.
Hmm.
I think you at least do that. Like I don't do
I
just I
think
didn't
so.
do just a, you at least do that, and maybe towards the end of the show you do something at the end. Like I'm not saying you do a whole segment for Hogan, but towards do something at the end for Hogan because that's what I would do because he is such an important part of professional wrestling. Like it's
Not only
not just
professional wrestling, but WWE itself.
WWE itself, yeah. So I don't think that they just do what they do for when Roman's father died or Roman's uncles died or another wrestler from the '80s died, and you did just give you they gave actually they gave Roman's father a segment, a promo segment, a vignette. So we could get one of those for Hogan at least towards the end of the show. So they'll do something for Hogan tomorrow.
That's what I'm saying. It might not include superstars because it depends
Yeah,
on how they feel, but it'll. I think a vignette. I think I don't know about the 10 bell unless you're gonna just do the 10 bell but nobody there. You know what I mean? Because if
yeah,
you do one of those, if it was Vince, he would have all the wrestlers on stage,
yeah.
and I don't think you get all the wrestlers on stage.
No,
So
I
if
think
you
at that
just
point
do
you'd leave it up to the wrestler if they wanted to.
yes, but then
But
if you find out only 5 are gonna be on the stage, I don't do it.
you don't do it. I agree. Because then it sticks out. And then it's like, why are these five? And then those five people then take criticism for why you out there.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. But ultimately, we're gonna wrap things up because TikTok only lets you run for so long. The one last thing I wanted to say is just, regardless of how you feel about Hogan, one way or another, just be respectful.
Yes.
Let's not put out any crazy videos like the ones I already sent you. It's a man has passed.
Yes.
Regardless of how you feel about it, you know, one way or another, just be respectful and respect other people's opinions because not everybody views it the same. Not everybody sees him in the same light. So just be respectful of everybody's opinions. Let everybody mourn in the way that they wish to mourn, and let's move on. But yeah,
Absolutely.
rest in peace, Hogan.
Rest in peace, Terry Bollea.